the goal is really to help financial planners find that missing piece. So often I hear financial advisors say, I know that I'm missing something, or I know I want to do more, but I don't know what that more thing is. So I would say to become a financial planner, there's a whole lot of technical skills involved.
I can't wait to introduce you to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the Know Me podcast where the future of financial advice starts with discovery. We're bringing you candid conversations with top industry leaders, innovators, and behavioral finance experts, exploring how wealth managers can deepen client relationships, personalize advice at scale, and drive real business growth. Because clients don't just want financial plans, they want to feel understood. They want to be known. Stay tuned, subscribe, and get ready to transform the way you connect with clients. Know Me, transforming discovery into growth. Today, we're joined by Sonya Lutter, a certified financial planner, professional, licensed marriage and family therapist, and leading voice at the intersection of money and mental health. Sonya's work sits at a powerful crossroads, helping individuals and couples navigate not just the numbers, but the emotions, the beliefs, the relationship dynamics that shape financial decisions. Through her platform, educational work, and advocacy, and teaching what I just learned, she has redefined what it means to truly understand clients in wealth management. She's the founder of initiatives like Becoming a Financial Planner, helping to expand access and diversity within the financial planning profession. Today, we are diving into financial therapy, behavioral finance, and how advisors can better understand the human side of money. Sonya, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
Thank you. I absolutely love what you're doing and can't wait to have this conversation.
Fantastic. We always start with the same question with every guest, and that is what excites you about the moment we're in right now, about the future of wealth?
Yeah, sure. As we were just discussing a few moments ago before hitting the record button, is that I was one of the co founders of the Financial Therapy Association. And that was in 2008 that we hosted our first gathering and invited people to see if there was some sort of overlap between finances and mental health, therapy, counseling, etc. And 18 people showed up. And to think that it's been almost 20 years ago and that now it's almost a no brainer that, of course, money is about more than just the numbers. So that's really exciting for me that I feel like we have arrived. And now it's how do we do money better?
I love that answer. And I don't think it's lost. My father, I often share on the podcast, my dad's a financial advisor and he has been since 1984 and 41 years. And it's so natural to him that, of course, it's emotional. Like, I am a therapist. I've always been a therapist. Everything I do even back when it was stockbroking and I was selling, stocks for commission, there was an aspect of therapy. There was an aspect of understanding what your client was going through.
Absolutely.
So I love that. And I love that, that you were such an innovator and kind of trailblazer in pulling together an organization focused on this. What brought you to it? What brought you to combine therapy and planning?
Yeah. So I went to school to be a financial planner. Actually, I went to school to be a speech pathologist, but science was not my thing. I learned. So made my way into financial planning. And I was getting ready to graduate, and I realized that I had no idea what I was going to do. If there was any sort of conflict with my clients, either with me or amongst each other, any sort of uh, emotional element, I felt ill prepared to address. And I was sitting for my last class, a case studies class, outside the door, and it was the paper bulletin board. If you remember those days on college campuses when they had paper bulletin boards, a homemade
I
kind.
have them, but they have URLs now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was something along the lines of, do you like working with people? And I was like, well, yes, that's why I went into financial planning. And it was this element of just right across the parking lot from where I was studying financial planning was this opportunity to understand people at a deeper level. And I thought, let me give that a try. So I went to do my master's in marriage and family therapy. And I was surrounded by people who did not come from a background like me. They were from psychology, social work, family studies, etc. And what I was seeing is that when they had clients who were coming with some sort of financial issue, they would not necessarily change the topic, but they certainly would not focus on that. It was a quick shift to something else related to that. Simultaneously, I had just graduated with all of my friends in financial planning. And as I was having conversations with them, I noticed the opposite thing, that they were avoiding the conversations about emotions or even values. I mean, that was well over 20 years ago that this was happening. So a lot has changed just naturally over time. But it was this huge dichotomy of these fields are not talking to each other. So it was me and my major professor at the time, John Grable, and my second major professor when I moved down to Texas Tech, Dottie Durbin and Christy Archuleta. We thought, what if we just see if there's other people like us out there? And during my master's program, I had actually come to know Ted Klons and his son Brad Klons. And so there was a lot of synergy around this. And I would say that's really where I got interested in this and realized that I wasn't alone, that there were actually a lot of people who are interested in this. And it's really grown over the last couple of decades, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and many of those names, and yours as well, have now become behavioral finance celebs. Almost everyone that you mentioned kind of has a place in the history of this domain, really bringing together the emotions and money and helping this profession, the wealth management profession, get better
Yeah.
at what it does. I love that. So what is your take on what are we missing as an industry? What are advisors still not getting? What do we not understand about the emotional side of money?
Yeah, I liked that you just used a phrase that you probably didn't even realize that you said of what are we not doing? And I'm not even sure that it's something that was wrong, but that we just need to add on to what we are doing. So everything that has been happening, I think, is fantastic. And financial planners are juggling a lot. Like there's always something new coming out. Just even thinking about digital currency, that's a whole new thing that financial planners have had to learn about. And this human element is something that they've always known about, but there's certainly an element that could be enhanced. So, not to say that any financial advisor has not done it, but I think it's this idea of being present, and it really is a shift to being present with the client and not necessarily having the answers. Because how could I possibly know about all of your family history, Marla, and how all of that family history is impacting the way that you show up in our conversation together? And for financial planners to recognize that, you know what, I might not know what the answer is. And that's okay because the client doesn't even necessarily need me to understand the answer for everything, but they want to be heard. And I think that's the next shift that we're going into is for financial professionals to just, dare I say, calm down and be present. And it's okay to not have the answers. And that's so much harder than it seems.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I actually don't think it's a muscle that they have. It's a muscle that needs to be built, developed, exercised.
Yes.
We have a muscle, exactly to your point, of having the answers. We like to start with the answers. We don't have a muscle of, am I asking the right questions?
Mhm.
Am I framing the answer to what actually matters most and you care about in your definition of good or in your framework of what's going to get you to take the right action? It may be very different from person to person, and some people may not be ready to take action today or ever or change their beliefs in order to get themselves to take action. And so I think that we're, without sounding totally condescending, the bar is quite low when it comes to where the industry is today. We're an answer first industry, but the best advisors recognize that's not sustainable.
Mhm.
And
And I think that sometimes advisors think that they aren't just shoveling information to the clients and they think that they are letting the client talk. And then you show them we have so much evidence to do that now. Most times when we're on a video conference, the transcript is automatically computed for us. We can easily see what portion of time did you speak versus I speak. And for advisors to see that, they like data, they like facts. And when they can see that, and they're like, oh, maybe I wasn't letting the client express their full story as much as I thought. And so I do agree that it's a muscle, but also one that they're not even aware needs to be built a lot of times.
Yeah. Going back to when you created the Financial Therapy Association, you had a vision. What was it? What is financial therapy in your words? And if you can talk a little bit about what was it in 2008 and has it changed or is it the same?
Such a great question. It has changed. My vision for what financial therapy was for financial planners to communicate therapeutically without being therapists. So, not necessarily getting dually licensed in financial planning and therapy, counseling, psychology, whatever, but
Although
to,
many do, like, and
yeah,
that's becoming more trendy.
yeah. And I would say that's definitely something that's changed. That wasn't necessarily what I expected or even had hoped for, but it's really great for the people that are venturing down that road. For me, what I envisioned and what I think there's still a need for is that communicating therapeutically without being the therapist. If you look at the meaning of the word therapy, thera means to treat. And I don't think that financial planner should be treating things. A lot of the bulk of them should not be treating psychological issues like financial trauma or even marital conflict, or maybe you discover some sort of family secret. I don't think it's their job to come up with a quote unquote treatment plan and fix that for the family or fix it with the family. I think their job is to hear that this is an issue and for them to be able to navigate, now what do we do, without just shutting down the conversation and moving on. So, what I see now as the role of financial therapist, given kind of how it's evolved, is let's let that be the treatment center and have them dealing with the really difficult issues. You've had Ed Combs on your podcast. He's a great example of a really fantastic financial therapist who is treating really difficult issues like attachment disorders. And I and there's a need for that. There's also a need for all of the other clients that we see that maybe just need a little nudge or a little bit of encouragement to understand what's important to them and maybe to communicate with one another and to see that plan forward. And that's where I think it could be more of this systemic training. So, kind of what I've evolved into since the Financial Therapy Association, it's called the Institute for Systemic Financial Professionals. How do we help financial planners, financial advisors see the whole system that's at play? So, not just the client in front of you, but how do you help them gather that information about the children, the friends, the church, the community center, all of these things that are important to them? How do we get that information more effectively and more efficiently to create a plan that the client is actually going to follow?
Sonia, this sounds very similar to what led me to launching a startup. I frame it slightly differently, but the framing that I use is if I ask myself, or if I use a proxy, great. But if I want to know what financial choice is right for me, the answer is always the same. And that answer is it depends. And what's missing is the how can I get clarity on what it depends on? How do I know all of those dimensions of my life, my history, my future, my experiences, my money situation so that I know exactly what this decision depends on, which unblocks me from taking the right action for where I want to go, where I think I need to go, where somebody, is guiding me is in my best interest to go potentially. And so I think that it's so interesting that we got to this because I think you really defined it. I was like, that's exactly the story of Nomi. That's what led me. The way I'm solving it is through tech. And it sounds like you're solving it through training. And there's so many opportunities for that marriage to come together. When you think about the information gathering, what are you seeing today? Is it a factor of Advisors don't know how to gather the information. Clients, and what we've seen in our testing, clients don't know the information themselves. They don't know how to share what's relevant. And that's where therapists are so great. They like know how to tap into the information and bring it to the surface. So what are you seeing in that discovery journey that's broken today?
It is focused more on the quantitative stuff, and there's no room for there's little, I shouldn't say no room. There's little room for the process component of it. So, when is it that the client lights up with animation or their smile starts to get bigger or they start leaning forward more? Like, what are those moments that we can capture and then ask the follow up questions? Like, a lot of what we see right now are fairly standardized intake questions like, okay, we need to get through these 20 questions and we have 1 hour to do it. And I'm not going to see you again for a year. So I need to get these 20 questions asked today. And I think that's what makes it challenging is because financial advisors don't always know how to naturally transition to what's not being said. And that's exactly what you're talking about is sometimes the client doesn't even know, but if you point out to them, "Oh, I see that you got really excited when we talked about this one area of retirement planning. Tell me more about that." And that's one of the things I teach about all the time is don't ask the questions, simply invite them to keep going with the conversation with, "Oh, that's interesting," or "Tell me more about that," or I would like to understand your perspective on this issue." And that really gets the client to dig into what maybe they don't even know at the top of mind is important for them. But as they keep elaborating on those things, then you can together get to those important things.
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Nomi is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, Nomi helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at nomi.com. I love it. And I feel like, again, we have a lot more to talk about, Sonya, post podcast. I think that one of the things that we're disrupting is just the format, the format of a questionnaire, and even the format of a meeting. Are you going to get the candid, open, vulnerable dialogue in a meeting that an independent vacuum of a digital tool might get in a framework without a meeting? We often hear from advisors, I think my clients come in and tell me what they think I want to hear, or even prospects. They come in and they tell me what they think I want to hear. And
Absolutely.
nobody leaves better in that case. Nobody learned anything that's going to drive to a fruitful, deep trust building relationship in that case.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when in what you've built and what you're seeing, how are advisors gathering and capturing the information so that it lives, it breathes, it scales. It's something they can go back to and refer to. And it may be something that evolves. But I think just even starting off with like creating space, like create the space for information to come to the surface. Because that information that you didn't create space for before is the key. That's the key to the trust building. It's the key to giving them more value. Is that kind of how you see it?
100%. When you were talking about Nomi and how it came to be before the podcast started, I was like, yes, she gets it. Like, so I definitely think we're on the same page with that. I'm like, this is the key to trust. And the way that I do it, because this is how I was trained in marriage and family therapy, is we always start with the genogram or a family tree. And from the very first conversation that you have with the prospective client, you're taking I do it on paper. Some people like the digital form, whatever makes sense for you. As soon as they mention anybody's name or any sort of event or location that's important to them, I'm mapping it out and I'm drawing. So if they mention themselves and their partner, and then they mention, yeah, a long time ago we did have this thing, this vacation home, or we were connected to this organization, maybe I'll put it further away from the couple. And then they talk about they mention, oh, yeah, I didn't have time to do that last weekend because we were out at this barbecue event with this group of friends. Okay, well, let's write them down on the list too. And eventually, it's like having your own autobiography of this family, and you can always refer back to that. And it's oftentimes really useful to show this to the clients as well and be like, okay, I remember you talking about Sally and Joe and how they were important to you. If you were to look at this, how are we accounting for them in your plan today? And that in and of itself is enlightenment for the clients a lot of times that, oh, yeah, I didn't realize how important they were for me or something like that. But just for them to be able to see what you're seeing is really transformative. And there's a lot of good uses for tech. I love AI. I think it can make our time with clients more efficient. And some of those conversations are also way better with other humans because you can continue expanding upon it and you can see some of that nonverbal communication that the tech currently isn't picking up on.
Yes. What we're seeing also is advisors are jumping into AI and not realizing that unless the data that is feeding the AI is good, differentiated, verified data, they run massive risk of speeding the commoditization and the generic services that they might be introducing. Whatever you're accessing through public data scraping is what every other advisor out there and every other person on the planet can access through public data scraping.
Yeah.
But if you're actually generating really good differentiated information and it's shared in an environment of trust where the more I share with you, the more value I get. Now you can feed that into the AI and the AI can help you understand how do I make this information usable so I can actually engage better, deepen the relationship, motivate them in a way that would be motivating. And that's kind of where we focused, and a lot of the work we've done with Dr. Megan Lertz is on that, is structuring that insight. I'm curious, you've done a ton of work on couples and women, and I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of that, your findings as it relates to financial planning and couples and working with women and making sure voices are heard and powering kind of the marriage and family part of, you've got two different people who have different histories, different visions of the future, different ideas of good. And how do you break through to get them to take the right action together?
Yeah. Uh, this is really depressing, Marla. And for all of the listeners.
I will attest it is for me personally. I would agree that knowing that you have to share money and make decisions together is depressing and hard.
That is hard. And also, would you believe that when the woman makes more than a husband, there is greater financial conflict for that couple?
Hmm,
That is
interesting.
research.
I would believe it.
Yeah, this is not like old fashioned beliefs. This is modern day couples who are saying this. And that is absolutely mind blowing for me to think that we must still be holding on to these gendered expectations if there's not this within the household, let alone out in the marketplace. Within the household, there's not even equality, it seems, in terms of who's making the income. And that seems really bizarre. And it certainly creates opportunities for conflict for the financial advisor to potentially navigate, but also just for that couple to understand what is important to us and how do we navigate our long term financial future. So for me, that's been one of the more interesting research findings. Another one that I think is really fascinating and a huge opportunity for people either to engage in pro bono work or to use this as a marketing tool for financial planning is the amount that a couple argues about money at the very beginning of their relationship is more predictive of satisfaction, relationship satisfaction down the road than how much they increase their arguing over time or how much they're arguing down the road. It's all about those early conversations, which for me suggests that values are the thing that's causing the conflict. And if we can't even get on the same page early on about what's important to us, that's only going to compound over time and create this massive problem down the road. Oh. one more, and then I'll stop with the research findings. But one of the other ones that I think is so fascinating is when couples are not married but living together. So cohabitating is the word for it. Those cohabitating couples accumulate no less non-financial assets. So they have the same amount of stuff, but they have far less financial assets, therefore far less net worth. And I think that's really interesting to think. It doesn't matter how long these people cohabitate, they are not seeming to put their resources into the financial assets for long-term savings, whether that be retirement or maybe education planning or whatever their long-term goals are. It's all focused on the now consumption. So they're buying the boat, they're buying the house, they're buying the stuff, but they're not focused on the long term. And I'm sure you know that there's more and more couples who are choosing the non married route, which all power to them. But also, how can we get them to understand that this could have massive implications for their financial situation and to come up with a plan that suits that and that they can still accumulate the financial assets that they need to accumulate to reach their long term financial goals and still have the relationship that they want to have.
What a fascinating insight and study. That's so interesting and just like armchair therapist. Like you kind of can see obviously if it's a couple that maybe for whatever reason decided not to make that long-term commitment, are they then reflecting that non long the lack of long-term commitment on themselves as well
Yeah.
and on kind of that's so fascinating. I'm so glad you shared that. What an interesting research finding.
And it's
Tell us
also
about
just super quick.
yeah,
Okay, going back to the question on what are we doing to gather the information? Not very often do we actually ask about cohabitation. We asked about married, are you single, are you divorced, widowed? But rarely is it, are you living with somebody as a married couple but not married? Sometimes, but I would say the majority of the time it's married and single,
like an
divorced,
unknown
widowed.
thing.
Mhm.
Super interesting. Tell us a little bit about becoming a financial planner. Like what is the organization? What's it all about? What is it that you're trying to achieve with it?
For the Institute for Systemic Financial Professionals,
Yes. Yes.
it's a mouthful for a name. The goal is really to help financial planners find that missing piece. So often I hear financial advisors say, I know that I'm missing something, or I know I want to do more, but I don't know what that more thing is. So I would say to become a financial planner, there's a whole lot of technical skills involved. I'm not necessarily saying we should replace any of that. We're just adding on to it. And sometimes that requires that maturity or time in the field to understand, oh, yeah, my clients are maybe withholding information that is critical for our conversations, or maybe there is this pile up of stress that they're dealing with, and I don't know how to deal with it either. Or maybe for really long term financial planners, I'm sure you've heard this as well, they struggle with their own grief as you see your clients start to die or spouses of the clients start to die. That takes a toll on you as well. And so for the Institute, really, it's all about teaching that therapeutic realization and how do you communicate with other people. But also, a huge part of it is the self awareness. How am I influencing what the client feels? This is research I did with John Grable at the University of Georgia, and we looked at physiological stress. So, the stress that you can actually measure objectively, not how stressed do you feel, but I can look at your heart rate, I can look at your skin temperature, your sweat production, and I can get an idea of what your fight or flight response mechanism is. So, how stressed are you in that moment? And what we saw is that when the financial planner shows up stressed, the clients are more stressed. If the financial planner shows up with lower stress than average, the clients are also experiencing lower stress than average. And we've seen this in other fields as well, that I am having a direct influence on the people around me. And for financial planners to understand that makes such a huge difference in what their client hears in that conversation. If I'm high stressed, I am in the fight or flight response mechanism, meaning I'm very myopic. I just want to get out of there as quickly as I can. I'm not going to remember the information. There's going to be really low follow through. So, first and foremost, we need to know how we're showing up because that's going to influence how the client is showing up. And then we need to know, okay, what's going on with the client and how are they able to receive the information that I'm sharing with them and how are they going to use that information after we close this meeting and they go about their daily business. So, self awareness and communicating therapeutically.
That's so interesting. I just listened. One of my favorite podcasts is co-hosted by a pretty popular news anchor, and she shared that a huge part of her job as a news anchor is to process anxiety differently. That she has to show up as the calm voice to the public that is kind of ingesting and holding what's happening and able to react and respond as kind of always the mature, non-triggered, non-reactive, adult voice that the public needs to hear when so much is happening and changing. And I thought that was so insightful. Where, if she shows up on the news like freaked out and reacting to what's going on, she would never be able to get her job done. And so I thought, same I bet for a teacher or for a doctor or,
Absolutely.
anybody in that role. That's really fascinating. Thank you for sharing. What, Sonia, is one instance in your life or a conversation that you had that has totally changed your personal relationship with money?
I could think of so many examples. I would say probably most recently, it's that the best decision isn't always the best financial decision. I shared with you my family's about to make a big move, and financially, it doesn't make a lot of sense immediately. Maybe down the road it will, but it really does make the most sense for the family unit. And I think for people to be able to see that sometimes most of the times, it's not about the money, it's about the other values that are in place, and, that really came to light for me recently.
I love that you shared that. True for me as well. When you launch a startup, you're certainly most people, I mean, some people are after it, but going after the money. In my case, I think similar that the right financial decision is not always the right life decision. Thank you for sharing that. This has been a phenomenal, insightful conversation. Thank you so much for helping us unpack and learn from your research and all of the work that you've done around the human side of money. It's a very important reminder that financial planning is not just about the numbers, it's about people, relationships, the story we carry, and all of the ways that those things manifest in our lives. Where can our listeners learn more about your work, follow what you're building, connect in, become members? I don't know if there's a membership structure, but where can they do that?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn, Sonya Lutter, or my website, sonyalutter.com.
And for our listeners, as you well know, especially if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, money is more than math. It's emotional, relational, it's personal. And our decisions around money are generally always motivated by those things. So take a moment to reflect what beliefs or experiences have shaped your relationship with money and are still serving you today, and which are not serving you today. Let us know in the comments if you got something out of this conversation with Sonya. Please like, rate, share. Make sure that your partner or your child or your financial planner has an opportunity to hear from the brilliance that was shared with us as well. And we will see you next time on the Me, Knowing You podcast. Thank you, Sonya.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.